Welcome, ladies, to the Real Estate Investor Show, providing inspiration, strategies, and insight to empower women investors to live balanced and financially free lives. Now, here are your co-hosts, Liz and Andressa.
So in today's episode, ladies, we have Malika Williams. She runs the Center for Women's Voices. And that is what we talked about so deeply on today's episode. Didn't we, Andressa?
It was wonderful. It was a quick workshop.
Yeah, it was like taking a shot of a workshop around exercising your voice. What I think is most useful, there was so much great tidbits and great suggestions and great strategies. But, she talks a lot about getting into curiosity instead of conclusion. And she really dives into that whole way of being when you're in difficult interactions. And she really speaks to really reframing how women can be very powerful leaders, but not acting like somebody that they're not. And she gives some amazing suggestions around that.
Yeah, she created a method called Breathe. And she goes on to like those 8 steps. That first is just recognizing the situation and going through, analyzing yourself, what's going on, what is kicking in. And I'm not going to give too much around that, but this is like your toolbox, right? We have tools to do different types of things in construction projects. This is a toolbox for us to deal with how we deal in different circumstances without over analyzing or being so apologetic. This is very powerful. It's something that you can really use on any circumstance in real estate and quite honest, in your entire life. So enjoy this episode and let us know how it goes.
Welcome back, ladies. This is Liz.
And this is Andressa.
Welcome back to the Real Estate Investor Show, where we are on a mission to empower women to live a financially free and balanced life. And whatever balanced, as we always say, right, Andressa, means to you.
Absolutely. It might vary. No, it does vary.
It does vary.
Women to women, it might look different. So we're not just saying, oh, it needs to be equal parts. It might be completely unbalanced, but you're okay with that, so we're good.
That's right. That's right. And, if this is your first time listening, thank you for finding us. This is a weekly podcast we release on Fridays, and we bring on some amazing women to talk about real estate investing, about business, and also self-care, which is what we're going to be focusing a lot on this episode about. So Malika Williams, thank you for being with us. Thank you for joining us on our show today.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
We are so excited to have her on. We always like to connect with a lot of our guests ahead of time because we really think about the women listening to this, and we really don't want to waste your time. We want to bring on women that are going to help you, and we're very intentional about that. And I just so enjoyed our conversation when we talked, like we were talking about like 10 years ago. We didn't talk for 10 years ago, but it felt like 10 years ago. And just so excited to get into her expertise here in a moment. So as we like to do for the women, like I said, that are back with us every week, we always like to connect with you to share a quick tip, story, something that is coming up for either me or Andressa, and we kind of take turns sharing that. So this week's my turn, right, Andressa?
What's going on?
There's a lot going on, and I want to share this for the women. Andressa and I have different personalities. We have different things that we're working on in our lives, and we support each other in those things, right? So for the women listening that can connect with this particular area, I realized last week that I don't always know how I feel. And it's funny because I'm a very self-aware person. I've read a lot of personal growth books for over 20 years. I've done workshops that I paid a lot of money for people to like, who are you? And they rip you apart. I've done that, right? I've done that work. And I realized last week that I'm not always aware how I'm feeling. And I was thinking about it, and you start to say, well, when did that happen and why is it happening? And that's all rabbit hole, and that's helpful. But quite honestly, it's like, what do you do now? And I think for the women listening that connect with this is that when you feel like your best self is not in a conversation, right? Because it's pretty easy to know when you're not, really there. You got to kind of be very, very mindful to like step out and go, what's coming up for me? okay, let's redirect this, or the call has to wait, or something else. I was on a call with you, Andressa.
Yeah.
And I felt very defensive, and, just a lot of emotions that are not useful for a conversation that we were brainstorming. We had nothing to do with Andressa, quite honestly, it had to do with me. But I'm like, I don't always know how I feel. I think I stay very busy. I'm very intent on other people. And because I'm so caring, which is a good thing sometimes, and I'm very intent how people feel, I don't always know how I feel and what's coming up for Liz. So I just share that for the women who might be moving very fast, or are always intent on knowing where other women are coming from. It's great, because you're empathetic and but you got to know where you're coming from too. And if you're not coming from a good place, I am not going to be showing up useful for a conversation. And that wasn't fair to Andressa or the people you're talking to. And it wasn't fair to me, right? Because I wasn't feeling even in a good place. And it had nothing to do with her. So anyway, I just share that as a quick tip. Be aware. If you're not aware of your emotions, start becoming like, okay, something's coming up for me. Let me look at it quickly. Let's redirect, or just, hey, can we talk a little later? Whatever works for you. But don't be on an hour conversation with people you care about and waste people's time if you're not really present. So Just wanted to share that.
And I just wanted to share with you guys that, when Liz, after this call, when she shared, it's important to have partners that first you can trust and you can really say, listen, I was a little off, or whatever the story is in my head. And number one, certain things I was not even aware of. And I was like, wow, is that what you're thinking at that moment, that what you're feeling? Or because when we all go to that rabbit hole and we're like, oh, they might be thinking this of me or that, but it's just our perception, right? And I was sharing with Liz, I am listening to Audible special from Gabrielle Bernstein called You Are the Guru. It's a 3-hour Audible where she basically shares so many things. And one of the things that I thought was very cool is that when somebody pushes your trigger, right? And you get either irritated, defensive, or like, I'm going to kill that person or whatever that is. So Gabrielle was mentioning that individual, it's touching something in you that is not healed yet. And that is why it is a sensitive subject. So it is just, we sometimes want to thank that person and say, oh, you touched something in me here. And now I'm pissed off, irritated, but what that is, right? It is all on us. The power is within us, has nothing to do with the other person, right? I take full responsibility when I am irritated with whatever that circumstance is. So check it out. It is a special Audible. If you already have Audible, it's free. So it's called You Are the Guru by Gabrielle Bernstein.
I love it. Yeah. Well, thank you. And it's really helpful to be in relationships with people who, you come from a place of kindness, right? And we're working on things. And quite honestly, when I had that conversation where I just kind of cleaned up, if you will, with Andressa, I did not say that it was her fault. I'm like, this has nothing to do with you, but this is what's coming up for me. This is what I'm working on. Thanks for being patient. And it was a really great conversation I had with her. So
always good. Always good
stuff. So always learning and growing. So Malika, I know you're going to help us do some learning and growing. And I'm so excited about this conversation, selfishly, of course, because a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about with you. So we always like to do, as we kind of kick things off with our guests, is share a little bit about, if you can, a little bit about yourself. Malika has an amazing background, and her focus is working with women, professional women, and helping them in a variety of ways. So you're probably going to say it much better than I can. So if you don't mind sharing a little bit about you and why do you focus on helping women and all those sort of things.
Absolutely. I just want to say right off the bat, you two are both speaking my language. I'm so excited about what you shared in this conversation. So I'm in the right place right now, which is good. So my background is in acting and performing. That's what I focused on in college, and I got a master's degree in acting and kind of entered the entertainment industry auditioning for television and film and theater. That was kind of my passion for a really long time. One of the jobs that I had as an actor was kind of an unconventional opportunity. This was about maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Was working for a theater company that was contracted by the Department of Navy to do this very interactive model of sexual assault prevention and response training. So we were there as actors, but we went to military bases all over the world, Guantanamo Bay, Japan. It was this great opportunity for travel, but teaching this very kind of heavy subject matter. So I started out as a performer in that context, and then I transitioned to being a facilitator, where I was helping to run these trainings with, sometimes there would be like 1,200 Marines, sometimes there would be 200, but various groups, Marines and sailors. So when I was training for this position, my supervisor told me, if you ever feel like your talking points aren't landing with the Marines and sailors, go ahead and just turn it over to the male co-facilitator. We always pair a man and a woman together. Sometimes things just sound better coming from a man. And exactly, traumatic pause, right? In my brain, I was like, what? That really hit me. And I knew where she was coming from because I had been in those rooms as an actor. I'd been in these contexts where, you have 1,200 Marines in fatigues with their arms crossed at 7 a.m. who don't want to talk about sexual assault response training and prevention. Like, there are a lot of reasons why it's difficult to kind of show up in that space. But what occurred to me was that the solution that she was giving me, which was to turn it over to a male co-facilitator, was just a very kind of clunky workaround for the deeper problem, which was that a woman's voice was not valued in this hypermasculine space. And so the way they had addressed it was by putting men and women together or having this trade-off. And I just felt like, for me, that was not an option. I would never do that. And I realized this is something that is happening probably in pretty much every industry.
Everywhere. Everywhere. I can't give you like,
right. And the way that it's addressed is kind of maybe giving women tools to be, have a lower voice or be louder, reach the back of the room, these kind of technical pieces about speaking. But I think just as important is knowing that you belong in the room and feeling that sense of purpose in those contexts. So I decided, okay, this is what I want to focus on. I think I could work on this for a really long time. I want to create a context where I can help women communicate without apologizing or overanalyzing, particularly women who work in male-driven industries, so that they can stop flying under the radar and contribute at their highest level, right? So that's my mission. I've been working for the past few years with women one-on-one in coaching sessions, and then doing group workshops as well. But it's been exciting for me, and I've grown so much in the work. And that's one reason I know it's such a good fit for me, is because I'm learning from my clients all of the time. And there's so much that it connects to. So kind of on the surface, it's about communication and the way we speak. But then right below that, it's worthiness. What do I have to offer? It's kind of, how do I deal when other people think less of me? And it's even, and this is one of the reasons I really connect to your mission, is that it's, the question about power and money is almost always there, of like, what do I deserve? What can I go for? What am I allowed to have or want? It's all tied in the way that we show up and the way that we speak to other people and the way we speak about ourselves. So that's what I'm doing these days.
oh my gosh, I can talk for hours. So as you were saying this, an example popped in my head about a friend of ours who was negotiating syndication deal for an apartment complex. Once called Liz and I, and she was saying, listen, I think that if I I step out of the negotiation and let another male lead, we wouldn't be having the issues that we're having now. So she was considering, for the sake of the deal, for the benefit of the team, she would step out. And then we're like, I hear that. We hear that and we understand, right? If it is, I always say, listen, in order to get the deal done, let's play around and see, okay, who is the best person to talk, to negotiate. But in that case, she had the skills, she had everything, the knowledge to do it. It was just a matter of gender. And we really encourage her to continue, because if she didn't, I felt that she will put a dent on her own perceptions of herself. And also you wouldn't contribute to other women to see it. So when she did close that deal, that freaking deal that she did close on it, I called her and I said, I don't think you realize what that means, not just to you, but to all the other women that can see you closing this $1 million deal here, that we can see, okay, not just for all the women, but all for the men, for the are dealing with it. So it's a space that little by little we're tapping on it. I believe the biggest challenge that women have, and I hear, is that I don't want to be masculine. I don't want to have to raise my voice or be forceful. It doesn't, it doesn't sit well with me. So what is the way? How can we still be ourselves and move towards, but confidently and powerfully?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that's one of the problems in the space now about kind of leadership development for women. One of the fundamental issues is that our kind of concept of what a leader is like, an older white man. Like that's kind of the model, the archetype for so long. And so when you think about, well, how can I be respected? How can I be heard? It's like, how do I become this older white man? Which is like, that's going to be challenging, right? And it's going to seem inauthentic and all these things. So I love that question. I think the premise is like, it is important for you to understand what leadership looks like on you and how you kind of show up as an authoritative figure in your own life. And all of us have experiences at some point in our life where we have had to take charge. It could be with your, in your family situation with your kids, right? It could be, if you don't have kids, it could be talking to your pet, right? There are times when we go into a mode that's like, listen to me, what I'm saying is important. So it's really kind of being able to connect to those moments, to those times when you embodied that and really getting clear, what were the behaviors I was doing? How did I sound? What was my frame of mind? What were the thoughts that I was having, and being able to extend those into other contexts of your life when you need them. I think there's a misconception that you have to always be hard or be, as you said, be masculine, right? That you're not going to kind of be yourself if you're a warm and friendly person. The reality is we're multifaceted. We have so many dimensions as human beings. And part of stepping into your leadership potential is leveraging different parts of your personality at different times and really having that facility to know I can be this way when I want to be, I can be this way, I'm not stuck in any mode. So I think really owning the fact that, there are times when I'm in control. There are times when it's not a negotiation, whether or not somebody listens to me or is hearing me, and that's going to look different for each person, right? There's some, you could think of our own, my mother never raises her voice, but there are times when she is so quiet and measured, and it's like,
scary,
scary, right? And that's not necessarily kind of a masculine embodiment of power, right? There's something else there that's her own. So I think it's really believing that there is a way to accomplish the goal that you want in your own body and in your own voice.
Yeah. And in your own approach. I mean, yeah, I think it leads really nicely into the whole idea of how to deal with difficult interactions, right? And difficult conversations, because it's one thing to, it's easy if someone's friendly and wants to chat with people. That's easier for them to have those kinds of conversations versus a, coming to Jesus meeting with somebody about a contractor. Let's use a contractor. Yeah. Let's use something that's applicable to our business. A contractor, right? Something's not working. We need to redirect. How does, I think I can just speak personally. I think women, and including myself, at times struggle with, coming across to be taken seriously, to get this straight, but do it in a way that kind of feels right. It feels normal. It feels kind of comfortable, if you will. And they don't want to come across as a bitch, or this person who's like, So, you talk about this, this breathe method, which I'm super intrigued about. I probably can use it basis my sharing earlier. When you have these difficult interactions, difficult conversations, we all have them daily, right? Personally, professionally. Especially if you're dealing with in an industry like we're dealing with bankers, we're dealing with contractors, we're dealing with a lot of people who may or may not take us as seriously as others, right? It's there. What is this method, and how can women listening use it in their own managing these conversations?
Yeah. So the breathe method is a process that I created to help myself and my clients deal with these moments that you're talking about, these difficult interactions that come up where there's a misunderstanding, or there's a microaggression, or there's some kind of even, Me Too moment of sexual harassment, or these things. And I think one of the points which you just spoke to, which is so important, is to know these things happen in life. And it's not about you all the time. Like, just kind of knowing that these things are going to happen, particularly if you are in a male-driven industry, or you're doing anything out of the kind of ordinary of what maybe a woman is supposed to do, in quotes. But even in that context, like, there are just going to be times where conflict is inevitable, right? So it's important to have a toolkit of how you deal with these situations when they come up. And the toolkit is not about necessarily, putting other people in their place or defending yourself. It's really about the kind of internal experience of how you take care of yourself in these moments and really manage your own mental health and self-care. So oftentimes these interactions will happen and we just, we either ignore them totally or we maybe acknowledge it but minimize it. And so nothing changes about the dynamic, or we obsess about it and kind of play everything over in our heads over and over again and beat ourselves up. Why didn't I say this? Why didn't I say this? And kind of just beat ourselves up for feeling like we didn't own our voice in the present moment, right? So this is a tool that it has 8 steps, which is a lot of steps, but it's an acronym so you can remember it. The acronym is BREATHE. And this is a process you can do one at a time, kind of after the fact, to get clear about how you're doing. Or you can just kind of pick and choose the elements that really resonate with you to have. And I think different situations will call for different tools, but this really connects to what you were sharing in the beginning, Liz, about that question of how do I feel? Like, it's not always easy to connect to that, right? To understand what's going on under the surface. And yet when you stay in the dark about that, you're really giving away some of your power and just agency, right? If you're not sure how you feel or what is impacting you. So that's what this tool is for, to help you kind of really understand what's going on. So the first step of the breathe method is just that word, breathe. Literally taking in air into your body. When we are offended or affronted or caught off guard, it's very normal to just kind of hold your breath.
Yes.
And when you experience that, right? And when you're not breathing, your brain is just not at its full capacity. It's not helping you when you're cutting off oxygen. So just taking a moment to breathe is super important. And it tells your body, I'm safe, I'm okay. Even if something feels like, an emergency, it tells you I'm okay in this moment.
Right. Can I ask you a quick question by sharing a situation? So I don't know if I shared this before with you guys that are listening right now or not, but I had a situation in a job site when one of the guys, which I really enjoy working with, really cool guy, right? So we were there, it was just him and I had zero concern about being at the job site with him. I don't remember what was the conversation. And then he said one sentence. I was on the phone with somebody else and talking. And then I hang up the phone and I was like, wow, that was rough. And he's like, yeah, it was rough, but your accent is still sexy. So at that moment, right, my brain kind of like tricked me. My brain said to me, that's not what he said. He did not say the word sexy. English is not your first language. You probably heard something else. That's what he meant. So I felt that my brain was in this like survival mode. Like, you're safe. You're cool. Everything is cool here. And then I was like in kind of like shock. I didn't know what to say to him. I actually didn't say anything at that moment to him. I just felt that I needed to leave the place and go somewhere else and then deal with that. And I went to a different process. We had to have attorneys involved, policies and procedures in place. Cool. Still cool with the guy, but that had to be brought to his attention that he was no longer allowed to speak with a woman that way. And he had to sign a document to really we had to document this. Not pleasant, but what you're saying is that when I felt that my brain I didn't have oxygen, and I just froze at that exact moment. So I don't know if that's if I was conscious or not at that moment. I don't think I was breathing. Yeah, that's exactly what you say.
I mean, what you're describing to me, it sounds like you really took care of yourself, right? And your brain signaled, don't say anything in this situation, just get out, right? Which you did. And then you addressed it later on in a different way, and I'll talk about that. But I think there's this myth that you always have to have a comeback in the moment, right? That's what we see in television. When a woman stands up for herself, if the guy says the thing and she tells him off and feels good and walks away, and the guy's like, oh man, and that's, that can be fun to see and empowering to see, but it doesn't happen all the time that way. That's not how real life is. And that's okay. I think in that moment, like you said, you felt like your brain froze or justified whatever was said, and then you just left. But the important thing is that you left, right? There was something really working for you in that moment, which was that really recognizing this could be a dangerous situation now, and you took care of yourself. So I'll get to towards the end of the breathe method. There's a step that really addresses that. So the second step is to be uncomfortable, which is to recognize that something feels off, right? That is so important. And again, it connects to what Liz is talking about of how do I feel? Really owning if you feel angry, if you feel uncomfortable, if you feel smarmy, if you feel belittled, just acknowledging what that feeling is so important. And sometimes this can happen in the moment, like when you're there in the parking lot and the guy says the thing. Sometimes this is going to happen later when you sit down and think, what just happened, the next day or a couple days later. But whenever the timeline is, it's important to just know what this person's actions brought up in you, how it made you feel without judging it. Often, I know, for me, I'm a Black woman. I'm always thinking about the angry Black woman thing, right? I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be seen as angry. I don't want to own that I'm angry. And the reality is sometimes I'm angry and I have a reason to be angry, and that's okay. Just kind of owning it is really useful. And then it'll allow you to move on to other things once you just acknowledge it. So the next step is to reframe. And this totally connects to the Gabrielle Bernstein piece, right? Which is really trusting that everybody can be your teacher, right? To teach you something about yourself, no matter if this person values you or is aligned, just by the way that you feel from somebody, from somebody's actions, that can tell you about yourself. And that's valuable, even if it's painful or uncomfortable. So you don't have to believe that everything happens for a reason, but you can believe that you will find meaning in anything that happens. So this is changing this incident from this horrible thing that was just thrust upon me to something that I can use to understand myself better, to grow, to understand humanity better, to make me more confident in my job, dealing with contractors or whatever. It's like deciding I'm going to take this and I'm going to mine it for all of the lessons I can. That's very powerful because you're not in control of the way other people kind of talk to you or the stuff that comes at you. So having a intentional practice of like, I'm going to take this and I'm going to use it for my own kind of empowerment is really important. So the next step is evaluate. When we are triggered, it can feel like the worst thing that's happened to us. It's at a 10, like the event, everything is very heightened. The reality is not everything can be a 10, just mathematically, right? There's going to be range. Some things are going to be small little comments. Some things are going to be really big affronts. It's important for you to have a scale for yourself to know, how does this, kind of in the scope of things, how serious is this incident? And there's a few ways you can do that. You can have like a number line with, 1 being a nothing, somebody just says something under their breath. A 10 could be, somebody saying, I'm not going to negotiate with you because you're a woman. Like, I'd rather work with your male partner, right? So, and that scale is going to be different for everybody, depending on your experience and your perspective. You could have a stoplight, like a green light, yellow light, red light. If somebody commits what I consider a green light offense, I'm not even, I might roll my eyes and then I'll move on with my life, right? Whereas if it's a yellow or a red, I might consider having a follow-up conversation or, getting more into it. Yeah. There's another scale called 10-10-10, which is, how will I feel about this event in 10 minutes? How will I feel about this event in 10 months? How will I feel about this event in 10 years? How will I feel about it, or will I remember it?
Yeah, right. Because we freaking remember it like a week.
Yeah,
I think my quick question to you, and that might be, something that other women feel. Sometimes we are rationally aware that the issue is very minimum, right? It's just like something, but it is bothering, and you go in that cycle that it doesn't get out. For some reason, we struggle with that. So it's kind of like a internal war. That is like, why am I still thinking about this? It's not important. It's not a red light or whatever that circumstance is. Any tips for getting over that?
Yeah, well, I think that's a nice segue into the next,
To the next one.
the next step. You're just like,
Good job, Andressa. You're just leading it there.
I knew it. I knew it.
so the next step is to ask questions. And this is where you ask, what's going on in my story that makes this moment really trigger me? Is there something in my own story right now in my life that is kind of making me feel really sensitive to this thing? So kind of investigating what is the connection to you. I had an incident with a friend of my partner's who was, when I was starting my business, he was mansplaining all the time to me about what I should be doing in my business, the Center for Women's Voice, and how.
Of course he knows how to run a Centers for Women's Voice. It totally makes sense.
And he was, very friendly, offering all, giving me all these tips and things. And, it was kind of harmless, but it was just pissing me off. And I had to get clear, like, why does this bother me so much? And when I really dug down, it was like, oh, he reminds me of my father. And oh, I have some insecurity about starting a business. So the fact that he's giving me these tips is kind of playing into the thing that I'm kind of afraid of. So it was really kind of asking questions is an opportunity where you take responsibility for your stuff that is causing you to see things in a certain way or impacting the way that you see things, right? Asking questions is also a time to acknowledge that we just never know the whole situation. We only have our own point of view. And it's very easy when we're in the midst of conflict to go to conclusions. And I always try to encourage myself and others to go to curiosity, right? What was going on for that person? Why did he feel like he could say that or at that time? Just knowing you just can't read anybody's brain, right? We can't. And so staying open to the fact that there are pieces of the puzzle that we don't know.
We would live a much more peaceful life if we just went to curiosity versus conclusion about every interaction we have with people. I mean, quite honestly, like, God, I'm like thinking about my kids. I'm like, I got to work on that with my kids. Stay in curiosity versus conclusion, right? And like my son's thinking about what outfit he's going to wear for Halloween. And I'm like, just pick one. That's conclusion, right? Versus, what do you think, son? I'm like, I got like 2 minutes to talk, try to get him out the door. I love that context. Go to curiosity versus conclusion. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, that's good. And it also, it makes it less personal too, when you recognize, oh, this person has a story also, right? That they're going through, and it might not even be about me in that moment. So the next step is to talk to yourself. And this is like the kind of, self-coaching practice of managing your thoughts. What are you saying to yourself about the situation? Are you saying, I'm okay, I'm safe, I've got this? Or are you saying, I'm worthless? This person doesn't respect me. I'm not respectable. What are the things that you're internalizing and kind of, that are kind of helping you go further into that spiral that you're talking about, where you're just ruminating on the same information over and over and over again, right? So it's really making sure, and this is something, to develop for a certain situation, but this is one of the pieces that's like, you can think about this anytime, empowering mantras for yourself in leadership context or in conflict before you're in conflict, right? How do you want to feel when you're in a difficult interaction? I want to feel connected to my humanity and my self-worth, no matter what, right? So having some language that you can say in your head that's going to support you through this process. The next step is to have empathy. So this is connected to the question and curiosity piece too, which is really believing that most people are doing the best that they can. Even if their best is not in alignment with our values, even if their best is offensive to us or appalling, most people, they're doing the next best thing, that whatever they deem is the next best thing for whatever reason. So really kind of giving people the benefit of the doubt. And that does not mean excusing behavior, but it means understanding like, okay, there's a reason this was logical for that person to do, which again takes it out of the internalizing it. This is about me. This is a personal attack on me. This is a part of the human condition, which is conflict. We're going to have misunderstandings. We're going to have places where our values don't connect. That's just a part of being a person. And the more you can kind of accept those moments with kind of grace, to just know like this is a bigger kind of issue or a bigger principle that's playing out. That can give you some distance.
Malika, a lot of the women that I know that are listening are saying, listen, because I know he's not going to go anywhere with that person or whatever that is, I rather don't go or do not have the conversation or don't have the conflict, right? Because I am not into having those conflicts with people. I am a peacemaker or whatever they label themselves. And I don't know if that is a cope mechanism for them to do not deal with it. But from your perspective, what is the impact on that person of not avoiding those conversations? What is the impact on her? Not even on the other person, on her.
So I think, and this does lead to the final step.
No, you're freaking kidding me right now.
Which is engage or exit. So you get to decide what's right for you. I don't think you should always be having these conversations. Okay. And that's part of the evaluation piece, right? If something is not very serious to you, I feel like if you were going after every single person that offends you, you are going to burn out fast.
Tired.
Right?
Yeah.
It's just not sustainable. And it's too much emotional labor to put yourself in over and over and over again. So part of this tool is having a way to decide, is this worth following up? Is this something I need to investigate or go get into more? Or can I give myself permission to let this go? Now that I've gone through these steps and know how my own story is playing into this and have really thought about the other person and whatnot, is this something to let, that I'm okay just moving on from? And sometimes it will be, you'll feel like, I don't need to go back there. And then other times this process might reveal like, oh, this is actually, I really do need some closure here. Or if this is particularly with somebody that you have an ongoing dynamic with, that you're going to be working with, seeing again and again, it's like, I think I need to address this so we can move on in a, more peaceful manner, or just to share what's going on. And I have certain strategies for how do you engage. If you decide I do want to follow this up, there's a lot of different ways that could look. I really do kind of always recommend coming in with curiosity of really asking somebody what was going on for you in that moment. I'm really interested to know. I'd love to hear what was going on for you. And can I share what was going on for me in that situation? Right. So there's a lot of kind of language that you can use to help broach those conversations. And sometimes it's not right after the fact, right? It might be 2 weeks later, a month later, further on, that you recognize, oh, I do want to follow up. I do want to address this. And so kind of leading with, I know it's been 3 months since we had that conversation. I'm still thinking about it. And so I want to connect with you. Is that something you're open to? Often that sense of, oh, so much time has passed. I missed the opportunity. It's over. I don't believe that. I think whenever you're ready for that is the time to happen. And in many situations, if it's somebody that we know in our lives or we know how to reach them, we can follow up. So I don't think that that timeliness needs to be a reason why you don't get closure or don't repair the relationship or get clarity, right? But I do firmly believe that's a part of your power of using your voice, is you decide when you want to speak up or when you want to address something, and you decide when you don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. And there are valid reasons why you might not, follow it up. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh no, that's it. Those are just decisions that we get to make in our own lives.
I love that. I love the acronym. And what we were sharing, what I wanted to mention was, for someone who doesn't, I'm not gonna say doesn't, for someone who naturally doesn't, I should say doesn't, because it is using the word, I'm trying to reframe it in a positive way here as I'm speaking, but I'm not naturally going to be someone who loves conflict, right? I'm not going to naturally seek that out necessarily. However, speaking my truth to people I care about is something that's very important to me, right? So why I'm sharing this is if women, you have to develop a muscle for it. Yeah. So in some ways you can choose, I had a conversation with my father, and I'm like the peacemaker in my family. My one sister kind of speaks up. The other one does, doesn't speak up as much. She's kind of doing her own thing. And I'm kind of like, do we really need, my dad's my dad, do we really need to engage him? He's 75. About something. And he kind of had a way of being with me in the car and just was really just down. And it worried me. And I normally, like old Liz, wouldn't have said anything. I was just like, that's my dad. That's who he is. It's okay. But it affected me in a way that I'm like, my dad's a really positive person. He's a lot to give this world. And I really wanted to share that. I was a little concerned about it with him. And that was hard for me because I don't normally do that, right? So I I had the conversation with him, and it was uncomfortable because I'm not naturally, I'm more of like, let me just, listen to you versus hey, this is what was coming up for me. And I had the conversation, and I'm just like, I came from a very good place, but I'm like, hey, you were really like, this world is going to hell in a handbasket. I was like, it was a really intense conversation you had with me. And it wasn't directed at me, but it was just, and I'm like, I'm worried about you. Is everything okay? And, and he's like, no, everything's okay. And I get it. And it was just a really good conversation. So I'm sharing this just with the women listening, because if you're not someone who engages and just lets everything go, there's a muscle you have to work on, because I do believe we get better when we work on things, and we get better by exercising the muscle. So I'm like, this is an opportunity to exercise that muscle and have a breakthrough conversation with my father, which is obviously the most important thing. But, or if it's like I'm talking with Andressa, I could have just let that go and worked on that issue myself. I knew what was going on. But me sharing what was coming up for me was, I felt like the right thing to do to build a relationship with someone who, close to my husband, I talk to just as much, right? Besides my husband,
Jesus Christ.
So, so I completely agree. And I love this model. What comes up for me is like, how do we exercise that muscle for women who don't naturally do that? Yeah. Don't wait for like the one big conversation to have. Do it in small ways, because then I'm getting better at this. It's like running. You don't just run 26 miles. You run 1 and then 3. It's the same thing with confronting and speaking your truth. Yeah. Right? I mean,
I love that story. And I think you're absolutely right. The more you are willing to have hard conversations, the easier it gets. And I think underneath that, you said something which was, you wanted to build a relationship or invest in your relationship with Andressa. It was worth it to have this awkward conversation because this is somebody that you're connected to all the time, right? And I think this goes into, what do you believe about conflict? What are the stories you tell yourself about conflict? Yeah. And that comes from when you were a kid and you first experienced conflict, or you saw your parents fighting, or what are the associations that you made? And I think, for some people, conflict means disharmony, or it means fear, I'm not safe, right? So then you're going to do everything to avoid those situations because you feel unsafe when you are having conflict. But there are a lot of other things that conflict can lead to. One is trust, right? When you have a conflict with somebody and you work through it, that actually builds trust. So there are different, conflict can also lead to clarity, right? Where you're clear about your values and you can really suss out or ask somebody what it is that it caused them to act in this way.
Yeah.
So I think opening yourself up to, you know, positive associations with conflict, and knowing that, you know, like you said, having the desire to build the muscle, knowing that the more you do it, the easier it'll get. And that, you know, to put it in the perspective of, you know, running a business or building an empire, like the more you are comfortable or able to interact with conflict, like the more unstoppable you become, because you're not taken down by all of these things, or you're not limited in your ability to communicate or to move on, or to speak up when that's called for. You're not afraid of conflict itself. So I think that's that's something you have to decide. Is that a value that I want to cultivate, or is that something I just want to avoid at all costs?
You know, one thing that you guys say, and then on the flip side, on my side, one important thing that you mentioned, Malika, is just like either have the conflict or exit, right? My muscle, I am more practicing that muscle, like the exit, right? Do I need to engage on, I don't know, Susie 003145 at whatever that does not agree with our mission here to empower women to live a financially free, balanced life, because whatever Susie 2345 thinks, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, do I want to tell her A, B, C, D, E, all the reasons why? Yes, but I need to practice that muscle. Right. So we are all practicing a muscle.
That's a really good point, Andressa. We're practicing two different muscles. When Liz should engage and when Andressa should exit. I like that. So we got breathe. So I like to go. I'm sure you're an amazing facilitator, Malika. Let's review them for the ladies listening. Okay. Breathe, reframe, evaluate, ask questions, talk to yourself, have empathy, engage, or exit.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
I love it.
And at the top, so breathe is the word. That's the first step. And the second one is be uncomfortable. That's at the very breathe, be uncomfortable.
Oh, there's like two to that one?
Yeah. The B.
Okay.
The B itself. That's very cool. We should tattoo it on our wrist. All the way down.
I love it. Well, that's really helpful, because I think, you know, it's like anything. You want to change something. You want to alter something. And then you get into the same situation, and we keep doing what we're doing. We have to shift, and we have to create a strategy, right?
Yes.
And you have to practice the strategy.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to do it ongoingly, and then reflect. Because I want to get into the situation where I have that conversation again with Andressa. Within 3 minutes, I know that I'm feeling defensive about something. I'm able to figure it out in my head within a few minutes. Yeah. And I'm able to speak my truth within a few minutes, redirect, and then have a positive conversation. That's where I want to get to, rather than like 2 hours after the conversation, like, I was defensive. Why was I defensive? No, I'm not blaming myself, but I'm saying, like, that's where I want to go. And I think most women want to, like, okay, let's move on. Let's not like rob the conversation, and let's have an empowering conversation. So I think most women want to be unstoppable in their own way, right? Yeah. We all do. Some people want to conquer the world, like Andressa and I are trying to do now. But it's like everyone wants to do something positive. And how do you do that? Well, the breathe method. I love it. I have like 55 more questions for you, so we're going to have you back on.
I would love to come back.
Malika, you've been so amazing. How can the women listening learn more about you and all the great resources that you have?
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here and to connect with your audience. So you can follow me on Instagram at Center for Women's Voice. And you can also sign up for my newsletter at cwvbreathe.com. That'll also give you a PDF of this breathe method so that you can print it out, you can put it on your phone, you can really kind of have the steps written down for yourself. So cwvbreathe.com.
Awesome. And all this information you guys can find on our show notes. And now we're going to transition to our fabulous 3 questions. The first one, Malika, is what's the most transformational book you have ever read?
All right. So I just have to give the caveat that these are the latest is the greatest for these questions because it was too hard to narrow it down. So these are recent things, but the book that has been so transformative is Essentialism by Greg McKeown. It's a very quick read, and it's not the most kind of revolutionary concept, but for whatever reason, the way that he laid things out, I really started to change my life after I read that book, which was thinking of myself as an essentialist, somebody who focuses on the essential versus what's essential to me versus a non-essentialist, somebody who has lots of space to do things that are essential to other people. And that kind of gave me the clarity and kind of freedom to let go of a number of activities that I had been involved with for a long time that were just kind of taking up my time and energy, but were not moving my life forward or my business forward. He gives a great kind of example that you might use if you were cleaning out your closet, right? If you take out a sweater and you say, if I didn't already have this sweater, what would I be willing to pay for it? And if it's, nothing, give it away. If it's, a lot of money, put it back in your closet. So it's thinking about the activities in your life and the relationships. If I wasn't already in this relationship, or if I wasn't already involved on this committee, what would I be willing to do to get it? If I didn't have the job that I have now, like, what would I be willing to do to get it? And if the answer is, oh, I would not, I would say no. If I wasn't already on this thing, I would not do it. Then it's like information of like, okay, get out of it, figure out a way, and it really impacted me. So I highly recommend that book.
Awesome. The second question is, what's the most powerful routine that you do to create a financially free and balanced life?
So I love to journal. That's something that I do every morning. And sometimes it's, pages and pages, and other times it's a paragraph. But one thing I always do is at the end of my kind of journal entry is make a list that's thoughts to believe for today. So going to that kind of mental hygiene piece and intentionality piece, thinking through, what am I doing today? How am I feeling today? What are the things that I want to believe to kind of live my best life or take care of myself? And it really varies from day to day. On a day like today, one of my thoughts was, I love connecting with aligned women and sharing the mission of Center for Women's Voice. That's a thought I want to believe today. On another day, it might be something like, I have permission to go at my own pace, right? So really getting clear about what I want my own perspective to be for the day and actually writing it down.
That's awesome. Last question is, which woman, famous or not, has inspired you the most?
All right. So right now I am very inspired by this woman, Kelly Brown. She's at Kelly B on Instagram. She's the creator of an online community called And I Get Dressed. And she blogs and creates videos and content around plus size fashion. Mm-hmm. And her whole ethos is like totally body positive and inclusive. And it should not be so radical, but it is, to see a woman in a large body love her body without making any apologies, without making it about fitness or weight loss, but just about style, self-respect, and joy. It is so exhilarating to me. And she's, I love seeing women who are really living that out, that unapologetic, bold life.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I'm going to check her out. Sounds like she's
yes.
our kind of woman.
Yes.
Malika, thank you so much for being on our show. Thank you for sharing all your expertise and just your truth, if you will, with us and our community. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I had a blast. It was wonderful to connect with you both.
Thank you so much, Malika. If you enjoyed this podcast and want to receive updates on our next interviews, go to our website, therealestateinvestor.com. There, you can subscribe to our show, become part of our investor community, and get updates on upcoming episodes.
If you like our show, please share it with other women who would benefit. And don't forget to leave us a rating on iTunes. We'd really appreciate it. And as always, we encourage you to take one action as a result of today's show and put it into motion so you can live both a financially free and balanced life. Thanks for spending time with us.
Ciao.